It's hard to see right away when you're first beginning the development of practice just how critically valuable it is. Not for the moment when you're practicing, but for the performance, the game time, the moments when life just slams you down or slams those around you down. There's a need for somebody to show up in those moments. And if you've not prepared yourself for that moment, you're not going to have much to offer. That's why we don't just say, let's do this to become strong and awake. We do this to become strong and awake for love's sake. As humans, we prefer the path of least resistance. We crave convenience, the payoff without the price. But when our lives revolve around comfort, it doesn't deliver. Living in perpetual comfort leaves us weak and asleep. This podcast is an invitation to flip that script, to choose the unlikely path, to get the life you really want through voluntary discomfort. This is Strong and Awake. I'm Dane Sanders.
Is taking care of yourself selfish? That is the question for today's episode. You can walk through any Barnes & Noble and find a giant self-help section. But I often think so many people stop there. Self-care, self-focus. It's really kind of an anemic end.
Say more about anemic end, because I think you're right. But what do you mean?
Oh, I just feel like so many of us stop with that. We get better so we can get better. Period.
I want to be the best version of myself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And again, a noble, thing to strive for.
Ish.
But there's so much more. Yeah, noble-ish. Exactly. You want to be a good person. You want to be the best. Sure. But it feels selfish. It feels incomplete to me. Mm-hmm. And that's where the anemic comes in.
Yeah, it's a little game.
It's a little game.
Yeah. So I do think, it's funny, this is an unorthodox answer. I think taking care of yourself can absolutely be selfish. It totally can be. But that's not the only option. There's actually multiple choice answers to that question. And multiple ones can work. So it's interesting to consider real situations that many of our members at MWOD experience. So I'm picturing people with certain personality types. They're nurturers, they're helpers, they're other-oriented people. They may have even spent the majority of their developmental years and adult life serving other people. And it was maybe reinforced maybe in their faith communities or in their, family of origin or whatever reason. And in all of these efforts to take care of others, they've neglected themselves. We hear this all the time. Mm-hmm. And that might even be some motivation. That's why they show up to the community. And it's great. It's a great starting point. And at some point, though, those folks, even as they're taking care of themselves, usually they come up against their biases, the things that they practiced their whole life. And they're just this doesn't feel right. This feels wrong. How in the world with my small kids or in my aging parents or my responsibilities at work or my responsibilities to other people in my world, how in the world can I prioritize me? That's just wrong. And that's what's been internalized on a deep, deep-seated level. And again, there's nuance here, but we want to say to the person who is just interested, and we say this to people all the time. People come also to the community and they say, I want to become the best version of myself. One of our standout friends who is in our community for years, still a close friend, talked to him this week. I won't mention his name because I don't want to indict him. But he has this bias towards I just want to be the best version of myself. That's my life's mission. And to your point, it sounds noble, but it kind of gets boring after a while. Live enough years of an optimized life, and there's not much interesting there. It's just a little existence. So there are really two examples of very kind of polar ends where one person's coming in because they just want to be about themselves. The other's coming in and they're trying to get off of the addiction or whatever it is, habit, whatever, of being so ruthlessly focused on the other. They actually want to prioritize themselves. They both have unique problems. We think we solve both problems. And the way we solve it is not so much their starting point, but where they move in the process of developing a practice.
Yeah, I love that setting up too, because I think we all at times fall on different parts of that spectrum as well. It's not just, right, I am this kind of person. As you relate with maybe a relationship, a particular category or lane in your life. You might be showing up as one or the other. So I do think it's important to understand that it's not just you're either this person or this person, but you could be that person in different categories in your life.
100%. 100%. Yeah. There's a running joke at MWOD that we need to start another group, which is spouses of people who do MWOD, because it's like an Al-Anon group or something. Like it's just a support group for people who are trying to help people develop a personal practice. And it's understandable. I know I've experienced that with my own wife, Tammy, when I'm like stretching in the morning or night, and she's just like, "Can we just turn the light off and go to bed?" And I'm like, doing my stuff, and I appreciate it. I appreciate her frustration and how it comes at a cost. So I don't want to pretend like there's no sacrifice that's happening for the individual doing the thing or the person around the person doing the thing. But one thing I've also noticed about my wife is in moments when she needs somebody to be strong and awake, not just for me, but for her or for our kids, or to have resilience when circumstances are very difficult. Those are moments where she's pretty glad that I did my stretching in the morning and the evening and did my cold showers and held my breath. And it's hard to see right away when you're first beginning the development of practice just how critically valuable it is. Not for the moment when you're practicing, but for the performance, the game time, the moments when life just slams you down or slams those around you down. There's a need for somebody to show up in those moments. And if you've not prepared yourself for that moment, you're not going to have much to offer. And that's what we do. That's why we don't just say, let's do this to become strong and awake. We do this to become strong and awake for love's sake. It's not even for us. Although we benefit, it's really kind of fun. But it's for the sake of something that's bigger than us.
Right. It's a secondary benefit that we actually get that growth and benefit, or if anything, it's kind of cyclical. It kind of fuels itself, not fuels itself, but it gets that flywheel spinning.
Let's talk about both of those use cases again. So you have the person who came in because they wanted to be their best selves, right? And the reason this is a cool solution for them, I think, is they get the benefit, right? They become their best selves. It's happening. But they also pass through a threshold that a new world opens up, a possibility, and they realize like, oh my gosh, I'm not the center of the universe. I'm actually fringe, radically fringe. And my life's going to come to an end anyways. So do all this work for me to have my best self that's going to die? Like, that's it? That's the point? Like they discover a whole new terrain of experience, which is super cool. And the other party who comes in like all they're about is the other, and they feel anemic. They feel like they've neglected themselves, and it's come at a significant cost. Those folks discover, wow, they can have their cake and eat it too. Not actually their cake. We don't serve cake at MWOD, but they can have the benefit of, and also their heart's desire to serve others. But in the serving, they have so much more to offer. They have more resource, more substance, more resilience. Like there's just more. And that's the stuff that gets me animated, is both come-froms get served in a way that is highly valuable. And we both get corrected. So if I'm just trying to be my highest and best self, that's really cool, I guess. But I get corrected because I realize there's more to this world than me. And my wife says, praise the Lord. And in the other direction, how can you give yourself away if you have no self to give? Mm-hmm. So you get the benefit of the developing. So there's course corrections, even while there's expansive experiences, all through this little effort to build a personal practice through habits and routines, and ultimately building it up.
And it's such an interesting paradox too. We're talking about them, in the sense of a spectrum where there's this side and this side. Mm-hmm. You either are over prioritized, just focused on yourself, practicing that. You're over focused on others. But really what we're talking about is like one and the same. Like if you're taking care of yourself best, you're taking care of others. And if you're taking care of others best, you're taking care of yourself. Like it's this paradox that It's attention. It's so much easier to say that than it is to actually do in practice.
Yes.
I mean, I think about my experience as a parent. I've got 3 young ones running around, and there's so many opportunities for me to want to be generous with them, to be kind and compassionate to them. And those are all noble means, but the vice of compassion is permissiveness. And so it's that tension that you're managing, like what might look like unnecessary discipline or something that, they perceive as, oh, that's unkind or uncompassionate to me in this moment, is actually true compassion for them as we kind of cultivate their character and let them be good citizens in this world. So I think we often wrestle with that in ourselves too, like that compassion, permissiveness, focusing on myself, focusing on others. So like, how do we begin to suss this out, or maybe identify where we're at in this spectrum?
Yeah. I mean, it does offer GPS-like mapping ability. Like you jump into building uncomfortable habits every single day, and you're going to discover your motivation. You're going to discover what you're doing it unto really quickly. Mm-hmm. And it's not good news or bad news. It's kind of not a moral thing. It's just like you're wired a certain kind of way. You have experiences that have set you up to be a certain kind of person. And your come from is going to be this or that. And again, what I like is in this community, we have space for everybody. It's highly inclusive, for regardless of people's motivation to participate. And it's not linear or binary either. It's not like it's done. You don't like come in, do the thing, and you're complete. It's like, no, you get into the thing and you might be complete on a given day, but good news is, Lord willing, you have another day tomorrow and a day after that. And that's what is the process of building a practice. It's how you get good at anything. If you apply it in a skill context, regardless of your motivation. If you want to be a writer, here's where I'll know if you're a writer. You write every day. If you want to be a tennis player, regardless of your come from and ability, here's what I know is if you play tennis every day, you're going to become a tennis player. And all of these things are consistent across all developmental pursuits. We just want to account for what are your motivations coming in, and how can we customize the building of your practice, the creation of your practice in such a way that it really delivers for you personally. So everyone who starts at MWOD, there is a standardizing kind of foundation building round, right? Where you remove the cognitive load. You don't decide anything. MWOD says, this is what we do. Do you want to do it with us? You jump in. Great. You just do the things. Then the real process begins. Then you start coming up against yourself. All the dynamics we've already talked about start surfacing, and you start second guessing. Like, I'm tired. It's hard. It's hard in a different kind of way than it was when people were just telling me what to do. I have a lot of different voices out there asking for things from me. Like, aren't you done with that yet? You're still doing that thing. And it's probably helpful, at least it's been helpful in my world, to say out loud to people, like, I'm actually going to do this for the rest of my life. Every day that you know me from now on, this is going to be part of who I am. And there's upside, I promise, because it's actually not just for me. It would be wrong to say it's not about me, but it would be incomplete to say it's about me only. So, and I'm actually doing it for me and for us, for the individual and for the collective. That's that duality you're describing. So I think when we get into it like that, you let a couple rounds go by and people start really, really getting it. But there's no getting around the difficulty at different stages. And the dynamic you're describing, especially for those who are really wired for, like, this is starting to feel selfish, that usually hits not in the first round. It usually hits in the second or third round. And that's, at least in my experience. And that's when there's just this little threshold to get over. And if they get over it, they really start to see, wow, I'm showing up to things with more energy. I actually have more to give. I have more. There's more of me. And it's ironic because you get that from doing hard things, but you become that kind of person that even the folks that you're serving look up to you and they go, how do you do it all? How do you take care of yourself the way that you do? I want to be like you someday. And it starts to reinforce, and you realize like this is what humans have been doing for hundreds and thousands of years, at least the ones that live well.
Yeah. And I resonate with that. And of course, we're speaking to our particular context within the MWOD community, but this applies to anyone who has decided or committed to something and is following through in cultivating those habits and that practice ultimately. I have found this too in my kind of second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth rounds, that it does become that you not only might start to hear that voice within yourself. I think for others, it's louder than maybe some of this is selfish, but for a lot of people, they're hearing that loud and clear from other people in their world.
Right. Yes.
I want to make sure we spend time talking about the stories that we tell ourselves or that we are being told. And of course, there's different motivations. Some people might feel judged. You're not drinking at the party. All of a sudden, why are you so judgmental? You're like, I'm just not drinking. I haven't said a thing. But I think some of it is out of that insecurity or something. Yes. But other people, spouses, there's real tensions that we're managing and navigating as we kind of hold this not balance, but tension of building and cultivating our own practice, focusing on becoming strong and awake, and this for love's sake piece. Mm-hmm. So what are those kind of major voices, I suppose, and that we're telling ourselves or that we're hearing from others? And if you were taking that in a different direction, I'd love to hear.
No, I love the direction you're going, because I think that dynamic. Let's stick with the example you gave. Gosh, you used to be such a good time at the party, and now you're like a teetotaler, or toddler, or whatever they call those people. You're not drinking.
Toddler too, maybe, I don't know.
Whatever. You're not drinking. What's going on? And you're kind of bringing the mood down. Okay. And I in my assessment of that dynamic is what's happening is it's a reveal, and it's not the same forever. At the beginning, it's disruptive, right? So you have a cultural norm in a context like a party where everyone does these kinds of things, and you are participating in that. And now all of a sudden you're not. And people are saying, well, what does that mean? They're not actually saying, what does that mean for you? Why are you ruining it? What they're actually saying is, why are you revealing to me that I'm participating in this and I'm not sure this is highest and best for me? But I know I really like it. So stop messing with my system. Mm-hmm. And I think that reveal it can feel dangerous. It can feel scary. Gosh, what's the upset? But I also have witnessed and experienced in my own life. Just last night, I experienced this. I was playing Settlers of Catan with a couple buddies, and they were drinking scotch and I wasn't. And I didn't say anything about their scotch drinking. I had nothing to say. They know what I do and who I am, what I'm about. Well, actually, there was 4 of us playing, and one of them wasn't drinking scotch, who traditionally drinks scotch. And part of me went, I don't want to be narcissistic here, but I think I'm influencing this person positively, because I actually think I created an opening for him not to actually engage. I gave him permission, and I didn't say anything. I just did it. I just showed up, and now it's that's available to me. And we've all been around folks who consistently go to parties and they drink a lot, and at some point they kind of go I don't feel good. This is not, my body's not happy with it, but they still will get a drink because this is what we do. So you do this long enough, and all of a sudden you actually become an opening for others, as well as you're just perpetuating the practice that you believe is going to yield highest and best in your life, and put you in a position so that if someone needs a drive, you're available. So I think these dynamics, they can feel uncomfortable. And my experience is when we can hold into that discomfort for socially and get curious with it, lighthearted. You don't have to make it a big heavy. You don't have to get moralistic about it. It's just, well, tell me more. What is it about me not drinking that affects you? And as you get curious, I think you'll discover a lot. Also, as you persist with it, what you'll see is more opportunities open up for others to participate the way they want to. You're being creative. You're saying, in this context, I can do a lot of things. Those are one thing. This is another. And this other thing actually yields the very things that you all compliment me about. Because what you compliment me about discipline, being in shape at my age, whatever. That's not available if my practice is drinking scotch when I'm playing Catan. And I'm not judging drinking scotch when you play Catan. What I'm saying is, if the practice, we all have a practice. We all are doing something that's yielding what we're getting. And are we happy with what we're getting? Is this as good as it gets? I say this quote over and over and over again. Man finds the level of despair he can tolerate, and he calls it happiness. Soren Kierkegaard. And the reason I say it is I want to remind myself over and over again, where am I settling? Where am I disqualifying myself from being the kind of person that can show up for the people in my life that I've committed to? And that's worthy. That's a worthy exercise. But most people are asleep. They don't think to ask the question, or they're not orienting. They're not creating a life where they can participate that way. And I'm interested in doing that. And you are, and our whole community is. Like, doing it together is a lot more fun than doing it solo.
Yeah, save the settling for Catan, not in life. I suppose I'm really interested in the tensions that one experiences when they are starting to change, when they are going down this path of becoming, and the people around them are starting to realize, oh, this isn't that challenge that they, as a side, on the sidelines or participant, they're thinking, okay, this is going to be done in 90 days, or whenever this thing is done, then it'll be back to normal. Mm-hmm. I'm interested in that moment, or that reveal that starts to happen of, oh, this isn't just a phase or a fad or a challenge. Like, this is part of like who they're becoming. And you touched on this, is a lot of times that change in general, especially for certain personality types, is really hard, and they resist that. And that can be often really hard to navigate, especially as someone that is going through that change, and maybe someone that has a propensity to being overly others focused and maybe people pleasing. Like, it can be easy to be like, okay, yeah, it was just a challenge. Like, I'm bowing out. Like, my practice goes beyond just being flexible. I can drop it whenever it inconveniences anyone else. Mm-hmm. So one, I think, it might be helpful to talk through and what that conversation might look like. But beyond that, like, how do we navigate that like internal wrestling and conversation that we're having with ourselves as we're approaching people, maybe beyond just your game night friends and like a spouse or someone who's like very intimately involved in your day-to-day life?
Mm-hmm. When someone becomes someone new, it's just going to be disruptive. And I've said this kind of before, but I want to kind of put a point on it. Like, a lot of people say they want change. They're seeking change. They want to, they want to lose weight. They want to gain muscle. They want to have better habits, whatever it is. And I think what's understated in that is, if you're successful, you're going to have an impact on others in ways that go beyond just the metric of weight loss or whatever the thing is that happened. And what you're describing is really just accounting for that. How do you account for it? Because other people didn't sign up for this social change. You signed up for it, and now you're doing it, and now it's impacting them. So I do think there's appropriately a lot of space that should be created to hear how your practice is impacting someone else. And I could see seasons where, like, if all of a sudden Tammy got cancer and she was going into like a season of chemo, and it was my job to pick up a whole bunch of new things, I wouldn't give up my practice. I really wouldn't. But I might ratchet it down. I might be really measured in the things that I'm committing to in that season. I would also be transparent about it in our community and tell folks, like, these are the circumstances. Can you guys, practices buoy me in the storms of life. I don't want to give up my practice, but I also don't want to be escaping the reality that I'm in with my wife by running away to hide at the gym or whatever I'm doing. And people do that all the time, right?
Oh,
and
totally.
So I'm not. So this is where we gotta embrace reality, and reality includes those that we're doing life with. And I think accounting for their experience is appropriate. But what you also heard in what I just said was you don't give up your practice. You don't. The practice becomes, it is the context of the container by which you develop resource, you grow things that you can actually use to serve others. And back to the original conversation, we're doing all of this to transcend our little lives, to make a bigger impact. So my practice is only really as useful as it serves my wife, as it serves my kids, as it serves my community, as it serves my neighbors, as it serves people I don't even know. Am I less of a jerk in life because I have a practice? This is the for love's sake. This is what we keep talking about over and over again. And along the way, because it's disruptive, it's just going to feel different. It's going to feel weird to those around us. And we should create space to hear that out. And also trust that in time, they're not going to want us to give up our practice either. But they do like it when we're flexible. And in certain situations, they need us to be. And this is where I think it gets really dynamic and really, really cool. I think of, the beginning of MWOD and me and my buddy Tim. And, Tim actually did get cancer and he ended up dying a year later. And his practice looked so radically different. In some ways, it ratcheted up at levels I'd never seen before. And in others, he just, he wasn't going to the gym very often. And although he did try to work out in his garage a lot, and it was really funny, but mainly he did it for social media and to poke fun. But like in those efforts, like I saw him show up in life for Jess and his boys. He was just super alive, and it wasn't about just him. Some of it was, but it was instrumental as well, and it looked very different. So this is where just doing what we tell you to do is not developing a practice. That's the start of developing a practice. And then in time, this is the reason why we spend so much energy in our community to help people own their practice with agency, where they're telling themselves, their future self is telling their present self, would you do these things so that you can become the kind of person that I want you to become? And when you do that, that's when the opening happens. But I to your point, I think the question of the others in our lives and the impact that it has, creating space for that conversation so you're conscious to it and that you're adaptable without giving up your practice is the key.
Yeah, it's so dynamic. It takes a lot of character and nuance and patience and course correcting to navigate these conversations and these kind of tensions, and not just for an external kind of third party, but for within yourself. As you were talking about, as whirlwinds come, the example of the hypothetical of if a spouse got cancer, maybe you would ratchet down or ratchet up in certain categories. Mm-hmm. And I have found that as someone that is a recovering perfectionist, as someone who up till now has only compromised when I can justify it, I find that I have challenge with navigating, like, how low do I put that threshold before I say, oh, okay, I gotta ratchet down or I gotta give this up. Mm-hmm. Obviously it's a nuanced answer and we can unpack this at a future episode, but I want to just acknowledge that tension exists. And that's, if we're trying to live in this kind of a way where we're like living outside of our comfort zone, kind of mm-hmm. growing in our capacity, like we'll often find ourselves on that fringe, like having those moments. So like, how do we begin to kind of navigate those and begin to kind of get some anchors and handholds navigating that tension within ourselves?
Yeah, I'm really glad you're asking this question. I think when you're under duress, you're not in a great position to make a decision. Okay, so let's just acknowledge that up front. And we all know this, right? I don't think anyone's going to dispute that. When you're stressed out, don't make a big purchase if you can avoid it. That kind of thing. And if you're in the middle of a committed practice and all of a sudden a storm hits you, I don't think you're probably the best position to exclusively decide what to do next. You might think you are, but this is where community becomes very, very helpful. An empathetic, compassionate, understanding community who also understands what you're up to, that you're interested in growing even in the midst of storms. So if that's you, I would recommend you having your sense of, gosh, I want to adjust my practice this way. And you bring it to other people who aren't under duress like you are. ask for their input, ask for their questions. And if they're the kinds of people like who hang out at MWOD, they won't tell you what to do. They'll ask you more questions. They'll help you get to a sense of a sober state where you're going to be in a far stronger position to choose what's right and good for the moment you're in, especially if you're a little bit disoriented. And I have experienced the benefit of that over and over and over again. And I've had people intervene and say, I don't know if that's the right thing for you right now. And it's helpful. It just gets me grounded, and this is, again, when you're doing it as a solo act, it's very difficult to navigate the precise moments you're describing, Mitch. And this is why you want to have established those relationships and have them in play in advance of the moment. Because if you hit that moment and now you're running around looking for friends to try to understand context, so I have a practice and I'm doing this, like, you're asking a lot of yourself and the others. And I don't think you're going to get what you're really looking for. In contrast, if you now, not under a storm, not under duress, methodically start building a thing around other people, developing the rapport, feeling known, you know them, you trust them, they trust you, you get to that moment that is inevitable and radically predictable. It's coming for all of us. You'll have those relationships in place and they will be your allies in deciding the ratchet up and down and the practice that'll ultimately yield the fruit that will continue to help you to grow so that you can serve the other in those moments.
Yeah. And this is not saying that you yourself are not the primary agent still. You're the one carrying out this practice. You're the one doing these things. That's yet right. It's such a resource, not only to do this on behalf of others, but you also get the benefit as you're linked up with these people. I think of like mountaineers or something. You're clipped in with someone. Yep. It's a benefit to them and a benefit to you. And there's vulnerability and risk there on both sides. But if you're trying to go it alone, man, is it so unnecessarily hard and difficult? Not the good kind of challenge and difficult.
Yeah.
Oh, golly.
Like once in a while, there's one of those free solo dudes, but they're once in a generation. Yep. And I don't even know if I want to be that guy. Like,
I mean, yeah. Alex Honnold, I get the butterflies just watching the documentary, let alone being on the face.
Like, forget the show, or imagine his actual life or his wife or whatever. But I do think he's a unique guy. And I will say this, a quick note and nod to him. The dude has a practice. And yes, he does. He's not doing that work naively. And the question becomes, who do you want to become? Who do you want to become? Who do you want to be? And if you're not putting in some process by which you're going to become that person, you won't become that person. You will not drift your way into excellence. It's just not available. But if you do want that, in the midst of real life, in real storms, in real temptations to quit on yourself, to cut yourself short, to choose the easy path, you want to choose the good way that'll get you the thing that you actually want. Tell me another pattern to get there. I don't know it. I don't know it. Besides voluntary discomfort in community, I don't know it.
Me either.
I guess we're stuck with each other, bro.
Well, thank you for this conversation. If you who are watching this or listening to this want to learn more about how we practice voluntary discomfort together and a lot of these things that we've talked about today, check out the show notes or below this video if you're watching this for more information. And thanks, Dane. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, you too, Mitch. This is season 1 of Strong and Awake, the Unlikely Path podcast. Men and Women of Discomfort is our membership community, and we are open to everyone. But keep in mind, our tagline is, "It's probably not for you." If we're wrong about that, or if you want to find out for yourself, you can find us at MWOD.io.